Are you a glass half full or a glass half empty person? One of the things I do first thing in the morning is to look online at the news. My husband calls it doom scrolling, and there certainly seems to be a dearth of good news stories on the news. We hear of wars in Ukraine and Sudan, a fragile ceasefire in Gaza with children dying of starvation, or earthquakes in Afghanistan and hurricanes in Jamaica. A few years ago, we were all under the fear of COVID. Jesus spoke of people having to face wars, earthquakes, famine, and pestilence that will come before he comes again. His disciples had been speaking of how beautiful the temple was. This was the second temple of Jerusalem, built 600 years previously, and was an imposing and beautiful building. But Jesus predicted that even this beautiful building would fall, the stones would crumble around them. It did in 70 AD. Jesus perhaps could have been described, given all that, as a glass half empty person. Yet he gives us words of hope and encouragement, even when describing how his disciples would face persecution and imprisonment. He tells them not to worry how to defend themselves, as he will give them words and wisdom that no adversary will be able to contradict. Jesus does not promise life will be easy. Hopefully, we will not face persecution or imprisonment for our faith, although there are areas of the world and people we perhaps know where this is a reality for them. We will, however, perhaps face difficulties, even ridicule for our faith. Paul, in his second lesson to the church in Thessalonica, was writing to the early church, living under a constant threat of persecution. He felt the need to correct a misunderstanding where the people believed, because of the increasing persecution, this must indicate that the return of Jesus was imminent. And so they were not working out of choice and had laid aside responsibilities and any plans for the future. This had the result of putting extra burdens on the church, who was having to support them in very practical ways. Paul warns the people against idleness, against a refusal to do God's work in the here and now. He quotes the rule, "He who is unwilling to work shall not eat." At that time, rabbis did not take payment for their teaching, and so would need to have a trade in order to make a living. You would often find them to be bakers or carpenters. Jesus made a living out of carpentry in his younger years. In today's society, it would be like a group in church believing that Jesus' return was imminent, deciding that they didn't need to maintain the church building or visit the sick or lonely, but simply wait in eager anticipation for that day. They could simply be spiritual, but this would not help them live now. Time would be wasted in the here and now, when it could be put to good use, keeping the building fit for purpose or caring for the needs of the community. Paul tells them that those who are not busy are busybodies. When we are unoccupied, there is a tendency to listen to rumours and hearsay, thinking that we have all the facts without checking them out. There is then the temptation to gossip, which only serves to create disruption and division. When I am doom scrolling online, it's very easy to suddenly find that I've wasted minutes, even hours, looking down one avenue or another. One story has links to another and then another. And this is idleness. It's time wasted. Laziness, as Paul puts it, and serves no useful purpose. Paul urges us. Jesus encourages us. And even in the words of the Old Testament reading set for today, we can see words of encouragement. A glass half full. Malachi was one of the last Old Testament prophets, and his book comes right at the end of the Old Testament. At first it reads of doom and gloom, or rather the fiery furnace. Surely the day is coming, it will burn like a furnace. All arrogant and every evildoer will be stubble, and the day that is coming will set them on fire. Not a root or branch will be left to them. But for you who revere my name, the Sun of Righteousness will rise with healing in its rays. That's Malachi 4 verses 1 and 2. The days are going to be tough. There will be a time of judgment, but no matter how bad things get, and a fiery furnace is pretty bad, God controls the future, and everything will be made right when his Son, Jesus Christ, returns again and brings healing and restoration to the whole of creation. So, as we approach the time of Advent, and we are encouraged to consider how we can live in the here and now as we prepare for that day, the timing of which we do not know, when Christ will return, we can obey God in every area of our lives here on earth, seeking to serve his purposes for us here and now. We can live as people with our glass half empty. We can doom scroll. We can despair at the world, paralysed into inaction. Or we can live as people with a glass half full, remembering that even in a glass half empty, there is still a glass half full of refreshing water. And with Jesus in our lives, the glass is always full to overflowing.